Hi, welcome to our presentation today on cyberbullying and conduct on the online environment. My name is Fiona Robertson. I'm a media and entertainment lawyer. I've been working in the industry for about 27 years. So I'm hoping that today you'll get some of my experience and some of my knowledge in this very tricky and very, very complicated area of law. What I'm going to talk about today is some of the actual laws that are sitting around your use of the device that's in your hand most of the day. So I'm talking about your phone, obviously, but it also applies to any online behavior. We're talking about the things that you're doing on the apps that are sitting on your phone, the comments that you're making on people's social media posts, such as Instagram, the things you're sharing on Instagram, the things you're talking about in your group chats on places like WhatsApp and in Snapchat. Whilst it really, really feels like what you're doing when you're conversing with your friends in a social media environment, it sort of feels like you're all sitting around a table having a few burgers and chatting about life. But in actual fact, that's not what you're doing. Under the law in this country and in all countries, what you're doing is publishing in the same way as the Gulf News is publishing, in the same way as NBC is publishing. You are publishing content to the market. And because of that, the laws that govern all of this are in fact the laws that are relating to media and cyber crimes and all of the things that address the content that we're allowed to share and that we're allowed to view in the UAE. So what I've got on the screen right now are the key laws that we are going to be talking about today. I don't expect you to remember them all, but there is something I want to draw your attention to in this list. The very first law, which is what we call the Print and Publications Law, was actually issued in 1980. Now, that's a really long time ago, and it certainly predates all of the digital media that we're used to today and absolutely predates social media by a good 30 years. So as you can imagine, the law that we're talking about, that is the key law in this area, doesn't have any nuanced or anything that looks and feels like it is talking about or addressing social media. So what the government has done is they've then set out some cabinet resolutions and some other bits and pieces of law to make it absolutely clear that when you're in this environment, when you're in social media, when you're online, all of these laws still apply to you. One of the interesting laws that we have to deal with in this area is what we know as the TRA regulations. Now, that's the law that absolutely stops really, really bad content from even entering the UAE. So when you go to a website and it says this website is blocked, it's blocked because of that law right there. I'm not anticipating that any of you are going to be doing anything that's going to be in breach of that policy. I'm really hoping that none of you are doing that. The big law in this area is actually the cabinet resolutions from 2017, and we'll be talking about those quite a lot today. But I also want to really draw your attention to the cyber crimes law. Now, the cyber crimes law was passed in 2012, so it's quite a new law. And what it does is cover things like hacking into people's bank accounts and doing things to incite violence and things that you would expect are absolutely not allowed under law. But what we also have to think about is within this act, there are other things that can actually become problematic when you're just sharing content amongst your friends. The key takeaway that I want you to get from today is although cyberbullying, online abuse, and trolling are not specific offences in the UAE law, they don't use those words. There are laws that can apply to each such activity, and those laws are quite stringent and have pretty high penalties involved. So let's just talk about the red flag of things that you really shouldn't be doing when you're talking about content in the Middle East. Things that are critical of religion, critical of the government are really not acceptable. Alcohol smoking are both prohibited as to be promoters. You can't promote the use of alcohol and you can't promote smoking. That would apply to anybody in any way. It's direct or indirect. And obviously at your age, you shouldn't be promoting that sort of thing either. The big things that we find issues with when it comes to cyber crimes within schools and universities is the issues around nudity, sex, language, and obscenity. So they're four fairly big categories that we see people constantly transgressing and not realizing how serious the ramifications are for running this material. Something you have to also be aware of is that that material that is against the cultural and social mores of the UAE is not allowed. And that becomes something that's really quite difficult to pin down. What does that mean? And what we're seeing is that the government use this in a way that can be quite flexible. So you have to be, again, very, very careful. These are things like using inappropriate hand gestures. These are the kind of things outside of the obscenity laws are also against the culture and social mores of the region. So let's start with online abuse, because this is the area that we see an awful lot of problems. Abuse, for me, is exactly the same as what we know in law as defamation or slander. And defamation is where you're saying something about somebody that is going to lower them in the opinion of the people around them. The things about this is, so and so is cheating on a test, or cheated on their boyfriend, or cheated on their girlfriend. It's things that you're saying that are determined, that are absolutely meant to make everyone else think bad things about that person. For us as lawyers, that's considered to be defamation. Defamation is at the core of cyberbullying, generally. What we normally are seeing in cyberbullying is people constantly at each other about how they're not good enough, or they're not up to scratch, or they're not cool enough, or whatever it is that you're trying to get across to the victim. But for us, cyberbullying is a form of defamation, and on that basis, it's a criminal offence in the UAE. Now, I really want to just talk to you about what that means as a criminal offence. It means that I am not going to prosecute the person who's bullying me myself. I'm going to go to the police, and the police are going to lodge a case against you. Now, once that happens, once this goes into the criminal justice system, me as the victim, I no longer have control over that case. The police decide what to do and when to do and how to do it. The outcomes are determined by a judge in a court. It's not determined by you or me. We can't settle it. It's out of our hands. That is a police prosecution, and that's what we're talking about with this type of content. The standards are pretty high when it comes to actual online abuse becoming defamatory. So it is important to understand that if you're going to complain about this stuff with the police, they are going to set a pretty high bar as to what is and is not defamatory. Nonetheless, don't take the risk. It's simply not worth it. The type of fines we're talking about are really, really high. Online threats is another area where we see a lot of activity in the schools and universities. And this is another area that is taken very, very, very seriously under both the cybercrimes law, the CCL, as I've put up there, and the penal code. So again, we are talking about criminal activity. This is something that is a crime. You guys might call it trolling or banter or pranks, but if you are threatening somebody by way of your phone or by way of your computer, what you're doing is you are for example, asking them to do something for you, or else you will tell everyone that you cheated on the test. Once you start putting ultimatums into this kind of material, you're starting to threaten people. It is blackmail for us. So we did have a fantastic case where a guy owed some money to a woman, and he threatened to kill her and her family if she tried to claim the debt. Now, these threats, probably way more than anyone is doing at school. But these threats, she very sensibly went to the police, who took it extremely seriously. And he was convicted to 6 months jail and was deported. One of the things you need to know about the cybercrimes law is that one of the things that can happen to anybody that infringes it in a bad way is that you can be deported. So with threats, the thing that I think you have to really keep in mind is the thing that I'm doing when I am sending this message to this person, am I putting them in a position where they are unable to say no to my request because I'm doing it in such a way that they will be compromised or they will be blackmailed if they don't do what I want them to do. The thing that we see the most is, please send me photographs of yourself in the shower, or I will. These are the kind of things that we see often. These are against the law. Inappropriate images online is obviously a hot, hot, hot topic. We've seen quite a lot of activity in this space in the UAE. I think the thing that's really important to understand is that there is a really, really broad range of things that are criminal in relation to inappropriate images. So let's just talk about the images first up. What is prohibited? Pornographic materials, absolutely. And the way that the law views this material is anything that is vaguely naughty in nature. So you don't have to be absolutely naked. You can be partially naked. That can be enough. Suggestive poses can be enough. You have to be really, really careful about, images of somebody in very small bikinis. How are they posing? How are they looking? And are you supposed to actually have it? The infringing act, really, really important to understand. You do not have to take the photo in order to be infringing on the cybercrimes law in this particular area. If you have it on your phone, send it to somebody else, transmit it, receive it, keep it, publish it, republish it. Anything that you're doing in relation to that image, that's enough for you to be prosecuted. And remember that everything you do, even if you delete it, can always be tracked back on your phone by a police officer. They have amazing technology and they can find out everything you've been up to. So having an image on your phone is going to be enough for you to be contravening these laws. Don't ask for photos, don't send them, don't keep them, don't be this idiot. Please, I beg of you. Saying no to people who are asking for photos can be really tricky, and we do recommend you take the lighthearted approach. Emojis are a really good way to say no to people who are asking you for images, and don't be afraid to report it to anybody, your teacher, your parents, anybody that you trust. If the images that you're holding on your phone are of a person who is under 18, and that may be likely if you have an image of one of your school friends that you should not have, that is enough for increased penalties in this area. And the penalties become really high. I'm not talking about thousands of dirhams. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dirhams up to 1,000,000 dirhams. And again, we're looking at jail and we're looking at deportation. This stuff is really serious. So don't be involved. This is the law. Now, normally I wouldn't throw laws up at kids, but you guys are smart and you can read. This is what I'm talking about. These, you can see the fine at the bottom of 1,000,000 dirhams. You can see it's 150,000, even if the person is over 18. Really, really a lot of money. And this sort of stuff also sits on your permanent record. So just be aware that if you're holding these images and there is a police prosecution, that will stay with you for a very, very long time. I like this image, which just says, I'm selecting my answer from the above choices, no. If anyone asks you for an image, please say no. Images are forever. I can't stress this enough to anybody out there. You sending it to one person means it's already out of your control. So even if you like and trust that person, even if it's someone you have a very close relationship with, once it lands in somebody else's control, it is out of your control. There are screen grabs, forward buttons, uploads, all of this stuff is there so that you no longer know how far this image is going to go. I'm sure when you were younger, you would have done that thing where, let's see how far we can get an image shared on social media. It will go a long, long way. We also know that there are quite a lot of students who are keeping and caching images of people that are inappropriate, and they're selling them on their phones. And that's happening across the world right now. So we know it's happening, but don't be involved. The thing you also need to know, as I've said before, this stuff is permanent. It goes on your permanent record. So schools, universities, and employers can all find out about this. Don't think that you removing the images or you removing the particular conversations that you're having is going to be enough. Universities have amazing technology that can deep dive into things that you think are long deleted. And this stuff matters to them. They don't want people within their campuses that are undertaking this kind of activity. And your family is going to know. And your girlfriend's mother's going to know. And your next door neighbor's going to know. This stuff gets out. Outside of criminal charges and penalties, reputationally, this is not good for the victim, but it's really not good for the perpetrator. I talked a little bit about blackmail and ultimatums before in relation to online threats, and I think we really need to drill down on all of that. If you're doing this kind of activity, I will tell everyone that unless you send me, unless you do this, unless you come to this place with me, you are going to be found guilty of extortion and possibly of blackmail. There was an expat case where someone threatens a lady by Snapchat. We're seeing a lot of Snapchat cases coming up at the moment for obvious reasons. It's now the most popular forum for social media communications. This woman very sensibly went to the police with the threats, and the guy was convicted and sent to jail and had to pay 21,000 dirhams to the victim, which I'm sure he could not afford. Once again, a little bit of law up there for you. You can see the penalties go up to 500,000 dirhams. It's not insignificant amount of money. This one, just keep it in mind. Your mother's going to know. She'll find out everything. I'm a mother. We know everything. Okay, I'm just going to talk very, very quickly about images in the online world because of the consent issues. So we do have a lot of laws about consent, and it's really important that you only use images of people with their consent. I understand within your friendship groups that this is not usually a problem, but do be really, really careful about who's in the background in your images, who might be in your images that will not be happy to be in those images. People who are in places where they shouldn't be, for example, may not be delighted to be in your images that you're sharing across Snapchat and Instagram. Doing these things without consent is again going to be problematic under law. And once again, if I can just say, this is not something you need to be concerned about, but just be aware of it. Taking photographs of girls on the beach is not going to do you any favors, because under this law, you're going to find yourself in trouble. Again, just some ideas of things you can say to people who might ask you for images that you don't want to give. So what do you do? What do you do when something goes wrong? As I said before, we always recommend that you keep it light when you're saying no to people, and make sure that if the threats or the bullying or the requests for photographs becomes problematic, find someone that you can talk to, and we will help you deal with it. There are lots of teachers within your school that are very, very good at helping out with this kind of illegal activities. There is an e-crime website. The Dubai Police has a segment within its website, and you're always free to go and use those resources. And if you're feeling like you're in danger, or you're feeling scared, or you're feeling like you have no support, don't be afraid to reach out to people who will help you. You can also call 999 for help, and the people there have always been super, super helpful with all of this. So I just want to reiterate, it's not just the bullies and it's not just the bullies that have a difficulty with this and the victims who have a difficulty with this. Everyone has to live with the outcomes. So once you start doing things with images or start bullying people online, the ripples go out, and it is seriously going to have ramifications for everybody involved. Other people will get involved if there's a bullying post, a semi-naked photo, a political rant about the government of the region. All of this stuff can come back to bite you later on. So we are sharing this information today so that you're better informed about what you should and should not be doing. And hopefully you will also be much more open in your communications with your friendship groups, and making sure that nobody around you is getting involved in any of this activity either. I wish you all the best. I hope you got something nice out of this. Safe social media, guys.